welcome to the very first episode of The Project Bag, a podcast about fibre arts and having the craftiest life possible and making all the things and wool piggery and general nonsense. I'm Gemma and I'm coming to you today from my home in Kent, where I live with my husband and our two gorgeous but very nosy cats, Archie and Kit9. The cats may make an episode on the podcast, but they won't make an episode. What am I saying? They're not that clever. They're amazing, but they're not that clever. No. They may make an entrance onto the podcast or an appearance even. That might be even better. But if they do, it won't be by design. It will be because my cats, like most cats, feel that they are entitled to being universally adored and need to be the centre of all things. So as I said, this is episode 1. A huge welcome to you all for joining me, or just you as an individual, or no one. I could be talking to myself. Now there's a thought. Actually, I quite like that thought. It's quite liberating because it means that it doesn't matter how many mistakes I make, which is good because I will make a fair few. Case in point, I've lost count. I've lost count of the number of times I've tried to start recording this episode. It's madness. I have been sat here for so long. So I've decided to just go for it. I'm going to try and do it in one edit. I'm going to try not to pause, not to stop, and go for it. And that said, I've just realised I've left all my knitting upstairs where I was originally planning to podcast from. I'll be right back. Okay, so I am back. I have not been crying, I have been yawning because not only did leaving my knitting upstairs totally spoil the whole I'm going to go for one take and just go for it and it's going to be brilliant or a mess, it'll be what it'll be, was kind of spoiled by the fact that when I came down with my knitting, I then had a yawning fit. And so I had to do another couple of takes. Right, about the podcast. Before I get stuck in, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it and about me. Full disclosure, I am the maker, designer and tutor behind the Project Bag, which you will find on Etsy, on Facebook, on Ravelry, now that the podcast is going up, but I'll talk a bit more about that later, and on Instagram. I am the Project Bag pretty much everywhere, but there are some variations. So Instagram's got underscores and things like that, just to complicate life, because why not? Why wouldn't you make things as difficult as possible for yourself? I started that up in January. I was preparing to welcome my daughter, Lara. She was due in May, and I had made the decision after a period of illness that actually I wanted to change career and work from home, and so the Project Bag was born, utilising my teaching skills and my love for crafts and knitting. So that's what the Project Bag's about. I'm not going to talk much about it because this isn't what this podcast is for. This podcast is just a chance for me to sit down and chat about something I love with people who hopefully love it too. I mean, I'm sure that's why you're here, right? You wouldn't be here if you weren't interested in knitting or crochet or fibre or craft of some sort. I will say that I'm not a big paper crafter, and although I do try lots of different crafts, it is predominantly going to be knitting and crochet and some sewing. Although that said, I've actually broken that rule already, because down there, I'm really proud of it, down there I've got something a little bit special to show you later. I'm going to use a fairly traditional format for the podcast. I think, judging by the number of false starts I've had, the number of times I've recorded the introduction, and the fact that I screwed up my "we're going to go for it" introduction, it's best for everyone. I've now recorded this so many times that I think I may just be repeating myself. I may be repeating something I've actually said already in this take, so apologies if not. I'm going to assume that I've told you about the Project Bag, that I've told you what the podcast is going to be, that I've already told you some of the mistakes I've made. Have I said welcome in this take? I don't know. Welcome. Thank you. If you're still here 5 minutes in after I've made this many mistakes and been bumbling through, brilliant. Sit down, you're my kind of person, we'll get on. Hope you have a cup of tea with you or a cold drink. I've got my ginger beer here. It's still too warm for tea for me, even though we've had a break in the weather. I hope you've got some knitting. Best be something fairly simple, because I can't promise not to be completely distracting, so and put you off your counting. And we're just going to get going now. We're going to go for it. We're going to dive in. I'm going to start with finished objects, or foes. And for those of you who don't know what a foe is, I'm not telling you to go away. It does mean a finished object. There are lots of acronyms, and I must admit, when you dive into a podcast from like episode 30 or something and everyone's using these acronyms and it's like a secret code, it's like you've entered into this weird world where everyone knows what everyone else is talking about and you don't. It's kind of like being the new kid at school where you've got all the in jokes and you've got the clicks and everything. It's really off-putting, so I'm going to try and make sure that I explain acronyms and I explain things as I go, in case 10-15 episodes down the line we get some people that drop in. So if you find that tedious, I apologise, but that's my reasoning. So I'm going to start with some foes. You won't get many foes from me because although I knit a lot, I love casting on all the things and I have grand ideas. And like many people with grand ideas, I don't actually often see them through, which is why, quite frankly, it's a miracle I'm sat here talking to you now. So here is, oh, I sounded like that person from The Simpsons just then. Oh, let's not do that again. Here is my first finished object. Now this actually, there's a bit of story behind this one. It was a languishing whip, and languishing I mean because I had a bit of a hissy fit with it and got bought. Sorry, I'm looking down. I'm actually picking the cat fluff off of this whip because clearly, while I've been waiting to podcast, my cat has decided that it must belong to him, and orange and blue go beautifully, don't they? So my ginger cat has molted all over my sparkly blue top, so you might see some fluff. Sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, I think I just got into a strop with it basically. It is a pieced bolero, and by pieced I mean you work the different sections individually. So you work the two fronts and the sleeves and the back all separately and then sew them together afterwards. And obviously at some point I've had a bit of a strop with it and I've said, Mum, can you please just sew it up for me? I can't do it. And bless her heart, she took it to do. But me being me, managed to give it to her without the pattern because also the border needed picking up and doing. And I think it was that really got me. That was what really scared me. And she's been asking me for probably the last 3 or 4 years, possibly even longer. In fact, my cousin Alexa is now, goodness, she's 12 this summer. Yeah, she's 12. Wow, okay. We're going to say it's been going for a long time, and she's been waiting so patiently for me to give her this pattern, and I've moved and I've lost it. So in the end I said to Mum, look, I'm a big grown up now, give it back to me and I'll finish it. And it stayed in its bag, and it wasn't even in a project bag. This is how much I disliked this project, right? I had put it in an old natty Sainsbury's carrier bag. Actually, you can't get those anymore. You know, the really flimsy Sainsbury's carrier bags, the ones that were phased out and the government's like, you know, buy these super strong ones, or, you know, you charge. Wow, that's quite a long time actually, isn't it? They've been gone for years. Anyway, so I'm starting to feel quite sorry for this whip now, this FO that I've got, and the thing is I still don't love it. Oh, shall I get on and show it to you? Shall I show it to you? It came back to me. Here it is. It's spark. Can you see the sparkles? I think you can. Oh, look at that. Can you see? Let's get that to focus. Focus, please. There we go. Can you see the sparkles in there? Knit with every stitch because it. Oh, there you go. I've got to hide behind it. I want to peer around to see what you guys are seeing, but I mustn't. But yeah, I think you can probably see my hands through there, and that's another story I need to talk to you about later, or I'm going to talk to you about later. I don't need to talk to you about it, but I want to. So there. It's my podcast and I'll talk if I want to. Yeah, and you can see here, look, this is such a good FO that I haven't even sewn the ends in yet. But it's seamed together. And so I had it back off her, and it was actually Stash Dash that got me doing this because it was so close to being finished. Stash Dash, for those of you who don't know, is a knit along or fibre along, I suppose, hosted by the Knit Girls podcast. And they are also the masterminds behind the SSK retreat in Nashville, Tennessee, which happens each year. I have not gone. I don't think I'm ever likely to, but I do kind of foster some kind of ambitions to go one day, just to be a part of it. And the idea of this is one of them's a teacher, and the most time she gets to knit is the summer holidays, so 3 months of the summer. And the idea is basically to knit as much of your stash as possible in those 3 months. I say knit, it can be crochet, it can be weaving, it can be spinning, and the rules change every year. So the best thing to do is to watch the Knit Girls podcast episode. I have actually put a link to this and talked about Stash Dash in my blog. I'll put the link for my blog down here, if I can work it out. That's another thing. Recording it is the first stage. Recording this podcast is the easy bit, right? It's everything that comes after. Oh my God, if this is the easy bit, then goodness help me when I get to the end of it and when I have to edit it and put the little things down at the bottom and tell you where the information is, and oh goodness. I'm recording this on Monday. I don't think it's going to get out to you until Friday. I'm recording it in July and it's going to be August. Oh well. Anyway, and Amy from Stranded Dye Works was on Instagram sharing that she's going to be doing Stash Dash, and I made the mistake of saying to her, I'm kind of tempted to do the 15k. And she was like, yes, do it, go on, I'm doing the 15k, you can do it, brilliant. And even though I knew that it would be a big ask, and I didn't have a sock machine like she does, which she's allowed to use to crank her socks, and I'm not as fast as her, I went, yeah, why not? Brilliant idea. Let's do the 15k together. I'll go for that. And then I realised my mistake. In my defence, I was an English teacher, not a maths teacher, and I work in feet and inches and yards, not meters, centimetres, kilometres. I signed up for 15k, and I didn't realise that 15k is 15,000 metres. I don't know how I managed that, because actually 1,500 metres is nothing. That's like 2 garments. So why I thought, oh, I don't know how. I must have been having a mad half hour, I tell you, when I signed up for this. And then I was like, right, I'm not going to make it, but I'm going to go out with dignity, and I'm going to try and do as much knitting as I can. And that is where this whip, God, I haven't even sewn in the ends. That's where this whip came back, because I dug it out of its miserable, sad little carrier bag, and I decided to sew it together and do the border. Sewing up itself doesn't count for Stash Dash. You have to actually do some knitting or crochet on it for it to count, but they are very liberal in other senses. So I mean, clearly I haven't sewn in the ends, so there we are. So yeah, this is my bolero, and the fun part is, I'll put it on, the fun part of this bolero is that I started knitting it when I was several dress sizes smaller, and since then I've been a couple of dress sizes bigger, and I've actually got to the point where I've lost weight again and I fit into it again, which is brilliant. So here we are. I'll just kneel up a bit. Oh, look at that sparkle, and doesn't it clash beautifully with my rust coloured dress? Stunning. So what I did, needs a button, but I'm calling it a finished object. I don't care if the ends aren't sewn in and it hasn't got a button. This is my finished object. I'm not likely to wear it. I love the sleeves. If you can see there, this picot edging. And picot edging was knit onto it as part of the cast on, which was quite fun. And then I've done similar edging. There we are. Similar edging around the bolero itself. And if I turn, you can see why I don't like it. Look. Now this is often a problem with stockinette. It curls up, but I thought to myself, that's fine, Gemma. Oh, here I go. Hello. That's fine. Once I've done the edging, it will pull it down and it will be fine. It will stop rolling up. It clearly hasn't. The only thing I've got to try next, once I've sewn the ends in, is to wash and block it and hope that the action of steaming it will force it to lie flat. If not, sadly, this isn't going to be worn, and quite frankly, I don't think I'd even put it in a charity bag. But still, counts for stash, so I'm happy with that. I'll take that. I love the yarn. It's an acrylic yarn. Sorry, it looks like I'm just shoving my chest into your face. I'll do this way. It's an acrylic yarn by James C. Brett, and it's got this sparkle, and it's actually called Twinkle. It comes in lots of different colours. And you can see my skin through it. Now, that is nothing to do with the yarn. What that's actually to do with is something called gauge. And your gauge is how many stitches and rows you get to a certain number of inches square. And I never swatched. I wasn't taught to swatch when I started knitting. No one I know from my early knitting journey swatched, and I had no idea really that you might need to size up or size down needles. And there's a funny story about that actually. So it always says, oh, it's essential to work to the correct tension to get results. But I didn't really know about tension. I didn't really understand it. I thought, well, the pattern says that I need a size 4mm needle. I'm going to get a size 4mm needle and I'm going to go for it. And so I did. And knitting quite prolifically. Liked knitting baby things because they're little and quick, and when you've got the attention span that I've got, you want quick projects because otherwise it gets tedious and boring. Excuse me. I'm not going to keep stopping if I yawn because this will never get recorded, and it is 4:20, and actually I've got to leave here in half an hour to take a friend for a driving lesson. So and I was late last time because I forgot about rush hour because I'm not used to driving in it, working from home. Yeah, so funny story. I should really have figured that something was off. I started knitting a Aran cable jumper, cardigan actually, it's beautiful, and I knit it for the size 8, which I was when I started it. When I finished it a few years later, I was a size 12 and this cardigan still fit. Rather than thinking that I'd done something wrong, I thought, oh my goodness, this pattern's not very good, is it? And it's like the Marks and Spencers of knitting patterns. It's positive ease and it's flattering, it makes you feel good about yourself. Well, I fit in the size 8 jumper, brilliant. Of course I didn't. I actually found out what happened a couple of years after that when my cousin was born. There's quite a big gap between myself and my cousins. They're quite a bit younger. They're 11 and 6. Well, soon to be 12 and 6. And I was knitting him some baby garments when he was born. Very, very excited that he was under construction, and I wanted to knit all the things. And it was my mum, actually, bless her heart. She very gently, which was very sweet about it, revealed to me that she had been undoing the things that I'd been knitting for him. Because I was knitting 0 to 3 months or 0 to 6 months, and they would have fitted toddlers because my gauge was that loose. Oh, I was so embarrassed. I'm really glad she told me, but wow. And when I think of all the non-family babies, because Samuel was the first family baby that I'd knit for in a long, long time. I think I only knit one thing for Lex, and she was a few years old by that point, so it was a bit more forgiving. And I'd knit for so many non-family babies, and I must admit, I'd knit some and I thought, oh, this is quite big. This seems huge, but I followed the pattern, so it must be fine. No, gauge is important. So that's another reason I'm not particularly fond of this. It looks okay from far away, but if you get closer up, you can see my skin through it, and I'm just not really loving it. So that's FO number 1. And now I'm going to do a really unattractive thing and shrug myself out of it. There we go, because it's still far too warm over there. Okay, finished object number 2. Now this is a real cheat. Those of you who've been following my Facebook page will know that in January I released a knitting pattern. It was a free pattern for a ripple scarf made using this gorgeous, again, acrylic, so super affordable for everybody, acrylic yarn. I think Signet do something very similar to this yarn, although this isn't Signet. And I released it, and the photos show the scarf, and it appears to show the scarf complete. Actually, I didn't complete it in time for the photography for the pattern, so we had to be quite arty with it and hide it so you couldn't see the needles. But here it is. I've actually finished it again for Stash Dash. Look at those. I've got to come round because I want to see this, but can you see those colours? Aren't they gorgeous? Do you see? It reminds me of mermaids. It's like, you know, when I started it, this massive fascination, because I actually started it last summer, with unicorns and mermaids was only just starting, hadn't really taken off. I didn't buy it for that. I bought it because I was having a bit of a rubbish day and I wanted to cheer myself up, so I went to my local yarn store. But yeah, as you can see, it's quite long. And again, it needs a good block, but it's a beautiful pattern. And I just, sorry, I'm trumpeting my own horn there, aren't I? I blow my own horn. But I really like it. I think it's really effective, and it's only a 4-row repeat. One thing I will say about this yarn is if you get it wrong, it's an absolute pig to undo. But there we go. See, it's a bit of a shimmer, a bit of a sheen to it. It's showing up really nicely on the wrong side, actually on the pearl side. So that is finished object number 2. Again, finished for Stash Dash. So there we are. Look, my beautiful scarf, which I've put on the wrong way. But there we are. So it's the height of summer, and I finished a bolero and a scarf. Go me. So that is also for Stash Dash. I don't know the meterage. I've got my book somewhere, but I'm not leaving again to go and get it. You'll just have to trust me. Third finished object, again, no end sewn in, is this. Now this is the neat ripple pattern from Lucy of Attic 24. It is a free pattern available on her blog. She doesn't charge anything for it, but her work is beautiful. I really recommend looking at it, and her blog is really lovely as well. I really enjoy reading it. So it's a neat ripple pattern, and the reason I've chosen it, it looks quite dense, and that's because it is. I've actually done it on a much smaller hook, but if you look, you can't really, there's not massive holes in it, and that's really important. Because you're thinking, what is that? Is it a giant washcloth? It's a bit too big. Oh, fluff on it. It's too big for a dishcloth. This is actually, it's actually a NICU blanket. When my daughter was in the neonatal unit, neonatal intensive care, they gave the babies, once their skin was when babies are born prematurely, depending how early they are, their skin isn't quite ready. You know, they're underdone, undercooked. And so they have to have humidity in their incubators, so they can't have blankets and things over them. It's temperature controlled, so they're not allowed to get cold because little ones can't control their own temperatures anyway. But when the humidity comes off, or when they come out for cuddles, they need to be kept warm. It's really important. And actually this little size here, doesn't look that little on screen, but it is quite little, is ideal for cuddles. And I had decided after my daughter's death that I wanted to make some NICU blankets. I think I wanted to do them anyway, but I don't think I would have started them quite as quickly as I had otherwise, to give back to the neonatal units that looked after my daughter. There were two hospitals, and they were both incredible. And what's lovely is we've got a quilt from the first hospital where she was transferred from. We were allowed to keep that. And we've got our blankets as well. And I think it's really important these blankets are allowed to go home with the babies. It's not that this blanket will go to a particular baby and that's their blanket. They get washed and cycled round and, you know, whatever comes out of the laundry. But when it comes time to go home, quite often they're allowed to take the blankets with them, and so they need more. They always need more, which is lovely. So that's a NICU blanket. And okay, that's a nice segue into whips. And on my hook, that's crochet, by the way, obviously not knitting. God, I'm all over the place today. On my hook is another NICU blanket. This one's slightly bigger because babies are born at all different sizes. My little lady was £1.13 and she was absolutely tiny, but you can be in NICU for any number of reasons. It's not just because you're early. Lara was early, but she was really healthy, but there were some babies in there that were term and unfortunately were quite poorly. So this is going to be a slightly bigger one. It's acrylic yarn. Both of them are acrylic. They've got to be acrylics. They've got to be machine washable up to a ridiculous temperature because obviously of infection control and things like that. But they are quite dense fabric because I've crocheted them on a smaller hook to avoid getting too many holes. I mean, those holes should be okay. If not, the hospitals can sell them. Both hospitals actually have a kind of space where they sell blankets to people who would like them. So that's another one. These are Women's Institute yarns. They come from Hobbycraft. They're acrylic, but they're nice and soft, and they have nice stitch definition as well. I've actually made a few things as gifts for friends using this, not just for hospital use. And these are some leftovers from my stash that I've got to use. It's not quite finished. I'm going to do, if you can see, I've done at the top, I've got cream, green, cream, grey, and here I've got cream, green, cream, grey. So I've got cream and then one more of the green to do. And then I will do an edging like I've done here. I haven't had to do an edging all the way around. What I've done is I've picked the last colour I used, the purple here, the aubergine, and I just did some double crochet along the edge to give the edging. Okay, that's those. So that's a work in progress. I'm sorry if I'm whizzing through these a bit. Now here, living in my sock-sized project bag, you see it's a really good size for it. It doesn't look like it with a needle poking out, but that's because I couldn't be bothered to put it away properly. One of my bags, but there we are, is a ball of yarn. A ball of yarn, yep, but also a hoe. Again, not being rude, a hoe is a half object. Now, I don't own sock blockers. I wanted to get some at Viber East yesterday, or Saturday, sorry, not yesterday, but they weren't any in my size. My tale of woe is that I have small feet. And there weren't any sock blockers that wouldn't stretch my socks out of all recognition because I'm only a size 3.5. Womp womp. I'm a size 3.5 and that means my socks are quite small, and most sock blockers, or at least the ones that were in stock when I got there, are kind of like 3 to 5, and obviously I don't want my socks stretched to a size 5 because they just flop around on the end of my feet. Again, ends not sewn in, okay? End sewing in, you're not going to get a professional finish here from my own personal whips and hose and foes, not until I'm at the point where I'm about to walk out the door and wear them. Life's too short. But this is my very own sock design. I'm really excited to share it with you. Obviously it looks a bit different if you wear it on a foot, but there we go. There we go. So it's got some cables and some pretty embroidery type stitches. I'm not going to give away the secret sauce. This is going to be a paid for pattern, I'm afraid. I'm not offering this one for free. It is currently with my test knitters, who as I understand it, are making my pattern bleed, as we used to say in teaching when you mark it with the red pen, make it bleed. It's really weird. You write a pattern for yourself and that's great, you can understand it, but it's kind of like your own shorthand. Even though we use the same abbreviations for knitting stitches, I've written the pattern in a way that makes sense to me and I can quite happily follow it, but the test is whether or not someone else can follow that pattern. And I've already been advised of a few things I need to change. So a huge thank you to my gorgeous test knitters who are testing this for me. But here we are. Right, so it is a 1x1 twisted rib. That's not giving too much of the secret sauce away. I just like twisted rib. It makes it a bit neater. 1x1 rib is a bit of a pain in the neck to do, if you ask me. And it's got a cable going down the side, going down both sides of the sock, and I've niftily brought it around the heel flap, around the gusset, sorry. Yeah, and it's got these stitches in the middle. And depending how wide your legs are, it either looks like this or it stretches out and makes this gorgeous scallop, depending how tight you want to knit it. It's got a traditional heel flap and gusset, and the toe is Kitchener stitched together. Okay, so I would say that if you understand sock construction, at least if you can get your head around the different parts of it and what it is you're doing, this pattern in theory, although being a bit time intensive because of the level of detail, should be suitable for anyone really. So the pattern goes down the front and it also goes down the back of the leg, but then it's smooth underneath, it's just stocking out at the bottom, which makes for a much softer wear. The yarn I've used is a commercial yarn. It's by Sirdar, which is a British company, although I don't know if they still have the wool spun in Britain anymore. I have to check that out. And it's the Country Style 4-ply wool blend. It doesn't specify what the wool is. I can't tell if it's Blueface Leicester or anything like that. It's probably a hybrid or a mule. It is 40% nylon, 30% wool and 30% acrylic. So it's not a lot of wool in there. But the 40% nylon, that's what I'm really interested in. Nylon actually has the effect of strengthening the yarn. So if you're wanting to knit something that's going to get a lot of wear, like socks, something that's going to be really hard worn, walked on, nylon is, I think it's essential personally. I know some people might be a bit, oh, it's not eco-friendly, but I don't know, I think I would rather have my socks last and not need to throw them away and replace them than anything else. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit rustic, this wool blend. I thought it had a lot more wool in it than it does actually, because it is a little bit rustic, but on your feet it's just fine. And it is machine washable, 240 on the wool cycle, and that's always useful as well, because not everybody's got time to hand wash their socks. I know I don't. I've got some hand wash only socks upstairs that I've knitted, and they have been in the linen basket for an embarrassing and unacceptable amount of time, an indecent amount of time. But it's summer, that's my defence. They don't need washing right now. I'm going to stick with that. So there we are, there's the first sock. They're quite special to me because I've called them the My Daughter socks, because they just, I don't know, there's something about them that remind me of Lara. Like, they're so delicate, but also so persistent, the pattern all over them. Yeah, I might change the name to something a little bit more streamlined, but we'll see. So they are with my test knitters, and they will be available in the autumn. So hopefully, maybe we'll have a sock along. Why not? Autumn socks. Okay, so that's a hoe. And I've dropped my needle on the floor, excuse me. I am using, these are Knit Pro Symphonies. I think they're called Knitter's Pride Symphonies in the US. I'm using a 2.5mm needle, although as Ellie from Skein Deer Knits pointed out, actually the needle I'm using really doesn't matter because everybody gets different gauge. What matters is the gauge. And I'm just waiting for the averages to come back to see what works. So yeah, this is Pride Symphonies. I really like these. They're quite a short cable, but they're nice and soft and pliable and ideal for sock knitting. Right, okay, more whips then. This is a baby blanket. You have probably seen it all over my Instagram. It is super simple, super potato chippy, as Yarngasm would say, which means you just, oh, just one more, just one more. Other people might call it a mindless knit. It is, as long as you remember you're decreasing and not increasing when you get to the decrease. And the colours just blend by themselves. Okay, it's colour changing. It's a gradient yarn. That's what I've got left. So I've got the pink and the lilac left. It's by Sirdar. It's either by Sirdar or Starcraft. I'll have to look it up and put it on there. And I am knitting these on my Knit Pro Zings. Try and peer through my fingers at them. Is that focusing? Focus. There we go, Knit Pro Zings 4mm. Okay, these are interchangeable needles. They're gorgeous, I love them. With nice long cable as well, but you can obviously change the cable that you're knitting on. And yeah, my husband's colleague had a baby girl, or his wife had a baby girl, and I wanted to knit something for them, but I needed it for me right now. I needed it to be something simple, and that I could just sort of work on almost subconsciously without having to put too much of me into it. I have got other patterns that I want to knit for her as well, but we'll see that soon. I just love those colours. I mean, you can really, it's showing up really super well actually on the camera. You can see the white into the lemon, into the really more vibrant yellow, into the green, and then you can just about see, whoops, here, how the lilac fades as well. That's kind of cool, isn't it? And actually it's had lots of admirers. It's acrylic, great machine washable. New parents do not want to be hand washing things, especially just the amount of general everything that goes on baby garments and baby things. So that's that. I have another whip. This is living at the moment. Well, it's not living. I put it in here for photography purposes last night for the shop update, but I've got it in my big size project bag. I put it in here to demonstrate the depth of these bags, and I just didn't take it out last night. I am using, from my local yarn store, Hop Stitch and Jumper, this gorgeous, again, this cotton, 100% cotton yarn, in the Coast colourway, which is a variegated colourway. And I am making a drops pattern for my grandma. Now, this was meant to be a Christmas present. It ended up not being a Christmas present. Then it was going to be her birthday present, and her birthday was in February, which still would have been great. She still would have had enough cool weather to wear it in. But I went into hospital on the 2nd of February, and although I had it with me, I was very, very tired and I wasn't in the right place to be working on this. But here we are. It's gorgeous, isn't it? I didn't alternate skeins, which I possibly should have done, because you can see this pooling in the middle. But I quite like it actually. Look down there, it's almost like stripes there, isn't it? So if I had, we're going to have some more pooling there, aren't we? It's a top-down construction, which means you start by casting on for the collar, for the neck, and you work the neck and you work the top part of the sleeves until you get to the part where that sleeve needs to separate for your arm. And then you put those on stitch holders, as you can see here, and you continue down the body. And when you've got to the bottom of the body, then you will cast off the body and pick up the sleeves again and knit the sleeves. There's a lot of firsts in this for me, actually. I've really enjoyed doing it. It's my first top-down sweater. It's my first sweater in the round. It's my first lace work project. I've never done lace before. And it's my first charted project. I'd never, until this point, never worked from a chart. I've done it a couple of times now on various little projects. But yeah, and if you can just see the lace here, you've got these kind of triangle things. It's not really showing up brilliantly on here. I'll have to get a picture. But yeah, so the sleeves are lace and the rest is stockinette. I am so close to the bottom here. People are asking me actually on Facebook, well, what do you use stitch markers for? This is what you use them for. This one here marks the beginning of the round. So I started it just before Christmas, so I've got one of my gingerbread stitch markers on there. And that marks the beginning of the round, so that's the centre of the back. And this one marks the centre of under the arms. And down here we've got the waist shaping. So these ones mark where I've done the decrease stitches. So I know that I have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the waist decreases. I've got one more to go. So if I lose count, it doesn't matter. And this one here is actually, so in that sense they're being used as progress keepers. This one is Groot, which I love. It was a freebie from a Guardians of the Galaxy He doesn't want to face the right way around. Face the right way around, Groot, don't be rude. There we are. Oh, it's because I've got it clipped on the wrong way around. There we go. There's baby Groot. Can you see? Focus, please. It's not going to focus, is it? There we are. That's baby Groot. So sweet. I got that as part of Guardians of the Galaxy collaboration between Truly Hooked and Die Candy. And this is the Harry Potter Gryffindor coloured bead. And this is one of my own that I have done the sensible thing and used rather than sold, because that's what would you do with your own stock if you make things? Of course you use them yourself. But they are actually clipped. God, this really isn't focusing very well, is it? I do apologise. There we are. They are actually clipped around individual stitches, and that's where the decreases are. So I know they're in the right place, and that's what this is doing. It's telling me that when I get to a certain number of centimetres after this one, I think it's 2 centimetres, then these, either side of this stitch marker here, I need to decrease. And as you can see, hopefully, oh, come on. This is my first rodeo here. Hide my face again. Can you see it's hooked around the needle like that? So it actually moves with the stitches. So you don't have to keep taking it off every row. You just slip it onto the needle as you get there. That will tell me where I need to do it. I am hoping to get this done for the end of Stash Dash. It is, there's one more month left. It finishes on about the 26th of August, I think. I'm not going to get to the 15 kilometres, but I quite like that actually. Oh, Grandma. I don't think these are your colours after all. I think they're more mine. No, I'll be good. I'll give it to her. She's been so patient, my grandma. She's wonderful. She's knit so many things for me over the years. And actually it was my grandma that taught me to knit as well. So I really wanted to. People don't tend to knit for her very much. So I wanted to knit her something. And okay, I didn't make Christmas. Nearly did. I was very close. And I didn't make her birthday, but I'm determined to get it to her at some point this year. If I can give it to her in August when she comes back from her holiday, then that would be brilliant. She won't be able to wear it, of course, because it's August, but she'll have it, so that will be good. So that's it. Is that it for works in progress? It is. I do have a new cast on that I'm about to do. Can you keep track of these works in progress yet? There's quite a few, aren't there? My new cast on is going to be in King Cole yarns. Well, I'll do that upside down. Yeah, Calypso, King Cole Calypso. It is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Come on. It's quite a loose twist. Now, I haven't knit with this, so I can't give you my opinion on it yet. But what I will say is that I know a couple of people who've knit with it, and they've said they found it quite frustrating. It's quite splitty. So I offered, this is actually being done for my mum's friend. It was her project. And she couldn't get on with it for whatever reason. So I said to Mum, right, get her to give you the yarn. I'll knit it for her. I have yet to cast it on, which makes me feel quite awful. I've had it for a couple of weeks, but I will get it done for her to have in the autumn. I love this colour. Can we talk about this colour? You see the blues? It's not variegated, but it's got different hues within it, and it's so soft and squidgy. It's going to make such a cosy cardie to wear. It's going to be such a wonderful piece. I love it. I absolutely love it. I wonder if I should accidentally knit it too big and then it could be for me. No, I won't. I'll be a good person. I think I've got the pattern here. I'll see if I can find it and show you. Hold on. Oh, sorry, I think I've just kicked the tripod. Oh, there we are. Right. Sorry, I'm not going to mention your name because I haven't asked you if I can, but I'm really sorry. I've screwed up your pattern a bit. This is it. There we go. You have to excuse the shine. There we are. So it's just a nice simple cardigan. It's got a really broad button band. That is going to be fun to pick up, because actually you pick up from the bottom all the way up, all the way around to the back of the neck. That is a lot of stitches to pick up and knit back and forth. That is going to be a lot of back and forth ribbing. Actually, I think there's not too much shaping in it, so if that's the case, then that'll be okay. I'll just sit for a few nights, a couple of weeks, and back and forth it. So yeah, that is going to be on my needles shortly. Other future knitting includes a new sock design. I have one in my head. That's why that sock's only a hoe, not a faux, because I did the one sock, completed it, wrote the pattern, sent it to testers, and thought I don't want to knit the next one. I want to get onto my new pattern. The thing that I didn't realise about designing before I started designing at the end of last year is that it really does take a lot of maths, and I'm not a maths person, as you've probably gathered by the fact that I didn't realise that 15k, sorry, was 15,000 metres. So yeah, so I kind of had enough of it by that point, but I think I will. I think I'll cast it the second sock on. In fact, actually looking in that project bag, I have started to cast the second sock on. So I'll do that at some point and see if I can get another finished object, maybe for the next podcast. Who knows? Who knows? Oh, right. What else have I been up to? Actually, I have been trying a new craft. I'm not telling the truth completely there. It's not quite a new craft. It's something I tried last year at Fibre East, the yarn festival. It's annual, and I went to it again this year. I went to it this weekend on Saturday with my lovely husband who came with me. He's super supportive like that, and it's actually drop spindling. So I've got it down here. This is my drop spindle. I bought it last year. I bought it from Spinspired, and a lovely, lovely couple who patiently taught me to drop spindle. And if I can get this off of the bobbin, you can see it's not brilliant. Come on, focus please, focus please. It's not going to, is it? Oh god, right, can you focus? It's not amazing, but it's a start. I have started to spin. I've been spinning this fluffy stuff onto this bobbin. I love it. I'm really enjoying it. I actually did this yesterday, and this is going to sound really rude, while we had guests. We were meant to have a barbecue. Sorry, it's my fault it rained, okay? So we've had a 6-week heat wave in the UK, and if you're living anywhere other than the UK, you're probably thoroughly fed up of it. So we booked a barbecue. And of course, as soon as you say the word barbecue, what happens? It rains. So anyway, we were stood at the table, and we were talking to them about Fibre East and where we'd been. And I just started spinning. So you see, I've twisted that. You twist it down here, spin that, and it puts the spin. Come on, Nigel. Puts the spin in there. I can't show you very easily. I have to try and. Alright, park that for a minute. Alright, there we go. Yeah, it puts the spin in there. So effectively you are spinning yarn to use. So you park it, and then you tease some out, and you let the spin jump up the thread, and you keep it hooked on there. Give it a nice, try and keep this out of the way. Give it a nice spin. Nice and tight. You can feel that tension. So then the easiest thing to do if you're a beginner, because otherwise it'll spin back the other way, is park it. You don't want to do that on a hot day. And then you draw, which means teasing some of this fluff out. Pinch. You see I'm pinching? And then, there we go. This twist has jumped up. I'm sorry for the focus. I'm quite new to camera work. So you see, it's actually gone up there. So, and then you wind it onto your bobbin. This is actually looking quite even. This is not a fair representation of what I've been managing to do. Right, so park it, draw, right, spin, get some more spin into it. So it's spinning, and at the point it stops, that's where you stop. Right, so you park it, and now here I can show you better. You draw, and this is scary because it makes you think that it's going to, break. Draw. Oh, look how thin that's gone. and then pinch really tight, and there we go. This twist has jumped up. So same again. It looks like a really lengthy process, but you've got to remember I'm only a beginner. I did this last year at the festival, and yeah, I did it last year at the festival. Bought the drop spindle. My friend and I each bought one. Hunted around for the best one for us. So we each bought one, and we each bought some fibre, and this is plain fleece. It's obviously carded and treated, ready for spinning. So yeah, we each bought some, and then I never touched it again. I got home, tried to show my husband, found it too difficult, and I did what lots of people do and went, well, this is stupid, I'm not doing that again. But I saw my friend at Fibre East with Spinspired learning and doing it straight away, lucky lady, she was doing it. And so I said to the lady, look, you showed me last year, I've already got a drop spindle from you. Oh, please would you show me how to do it again? And bless her heart, she did. She actually stayed and stood with us and taught me how to do it again. And having said that, I'm just about to split this. So I'm going to wrap this around the bobbin. I haven't brought any fibre down with me because all the fibre I had, I actually bought last year at Fibre East from Spinspired. No, not from Spinspired, from lots of different fibre artists. But I'm not at the stage where I'm brave enough to start spinning that yet, so I'm not going to show you. It's called a drop spindle, fairly obviously, because you are literally hanging it, you are literally dropping it, letting go of it and spinning from there, as opposed to a traditional spinning wheel. There's also a Turkish spindle, which is quite interesting. It's got a little kind of cross shape to it. Never tried it, haven't got a clue. I do harbour secret fantasies of having a spinning wheel. I have to master the drop spindle first. So yeah, so I've got this bag of fibre, about 100 grams. I'm aiming to spin 4-ply sock weight. Afterwards, I might dye it. Who knows? I might dye it. Or I might just leave it and say, I did that. Yeah, so there we go. Great fun. Okay, having said that, I'm going to finish all this in one take. I now realise that time has run away from me. I do need to go, so I will finish this when I get back, or possibly tomorrow if the light's not in my favour. Hello, I'm back. Sorry about that. Time just ran away from me. Continuity, same costume, but it is a new day. It's brighter, which does mean that without the studio lights, there's a possibility that there'll be some light and dark. I just couldn't get them set up. I'm a bit of a technocrat, so. Right, so we talked about works in progress. We talked about foes and hoes, and I'd shown you semi-successfully some of my spinning, and that actually takes us really nicely into one of the things I wanted to talk about this week, which is Fibre East. For those of you that don't know, Fibre East is a yarn festival. It's annual. I think it's Bedfordshire. I don't know, I just went with the sat nav told me. And yeah, it's great fun. I went for the first time last year with some girlfriends, and we just had the best day. And there was just a little bit of wool piggery, just a little bit. I bought so much yarn at one stand that I actually got a free tote bag. So there we are. So here we are in my gorgeous Tits Out Collective bag, and I will talk about that another time. I've also talked about it on my Instagram. Tits Out Collective bag from Countess Ablaze. I did not get this from Fibre East. I bought it as part of the Tits Out Collective event that the Countess ran, and as I say, that I've talked about that on Facebook and on Instagram, and I will link the blog post for the Countess down below so that if you're curious you can find out a bit more about it. But I'm really conscious that this is already heading very close to an hour, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. And I want to show you the pretty yarn. I know this isn't for everybody, this wool piggery. If you're not interested in seeing what I bought, then I will try my best to put a timestamp about here. Ding! There it is. In theory. So you know which bit to skip ahead to for the next section. So, right, I went with a budget in mind. I am very proud to say that, provided you don't count the gifts I bought for friends, I stayed under budget by about £7. I won't tell you how much it was because it's my business. And yeah, it was, I think my husband was quite impressed. He thought I was quite restrained, but we'll see. Oh, hang on. I'll take a sip of this. Frog in my throat. Yeah, it's project bag mug. Not saying shameless self-promotion. What it is actually is it's ginger beer in here. It's not tea. Same as yesterday. But I was suddenly conscious that if I wasn't careful, I'd be I don't know. I thought it looked nicer putting it in a mug rather than you know, swigging it from a can like some sort of lush. Yeah, anyway. So I think Helen thought I was quite restrained actually. That makes me feel quite proud. I've got plans for almost everything I bought, which is quite organised for me and quite strange. To put it into context, I bought almost as much at Fibre last year. And I have caked up one skein of the yarn, cast it on. It was that Christmas shawl I was talking about in my live a few weeks ago, or my not quite live a few weeks ago on Facebook. It's that shawl. I cast it on, knit a few rows, got it wrong, re-caked it up and left it. And that's all I've done from what I had of Fibre last year. Even the drop spindle has only just started having use. So I'm not going to do this in order because we'll be here all day. But first of all, I went to Bellica Yarns. Isn't that gorgeous? There's her. Yep, and you see she's on Etsy there as well, and on Facebook you can find her. She's lovely. She's based in Bristol. Really, really lovely lady. And you can see the colourway here, all the greens. And she showed us how they knit up. She had a pair of sample socks, and I wish that I'd taken a photo of it, but I didn't. Because it would have been lovely to put just here and show you, but you'll just have to wait for me to cast on, won't you, and see how it knits up then. The nature of hand-dyed yarn is that even though they're all done in the same dye pot, so these 3 skeins I've got, there's 2 here, third one here, okay, they were all the same batch. They were all done in the same dye pot, but can you see this one's taken more of the kind of yellowy green to it, and this one's got more of the, yeah, it's the nature of hand-dyed. They're all in the same pot, the same amount of dye goes in, but the dyeing process means that depending what bit's on top, it will take different amounts of the colour. So it's the same colourway, and you can quite clearly see they're related, can't you? They're too close not to be. So I was looking at the yarn then rather than at you. This is going to happen. I'm going to stare at the yarn rather than looking like I'm talking to you now because I'm a yarn magpie. I'm a bit addicted. So yeah, if you alternate skeins as you knit, it stops clumping of colours and it stops having like a block where it's obvious where you've joined on the next skein of yarn. So yeah, and that, I think because of the amount of variation in it, but it's quite pale, this might be the sweater that I have a go at designing. I've got some ideas in my mind and I think this would be gorgeous. I'm not going to tell you too much about it because, as I said, I'm a fledgling designer and I haven't designed an adult's sweater yet. This will be my first one and it could go horribly wrong. And that also I could decide that, how is there cat fluff on this already? It's only been in the house 2 days and it hasn't left the bag. Oh my word. Or maybe it's her cat, who knows? Maybe she has a cat. It's probably mine, it was Ginger. Yeah, I may just want to knit it up for the joy of it and decide not to design for this one anyway. But just look, one more go. Look, there we go. Oh, those colours, absolutely beautiful. Green might not be your thing, but I promise you, when this knits up, it's absolutely stunning. I was drawn to it anyway. And then she showed me the sock, and I was just like, sold. These are not going to be socks, they're going to be a jumper. I'm really pleased these were in the sale bin, so I got a sweater's quantity for £27, which is an absolute bargain for hand-dyed. It's 4-ply, it is 100 grams, 400 metres, 85% superwash merino and 15% nylon. So these would be ideal for socks. but I'm going to use them for my sweater. Okay, love it. From there, I said I wasn't going to do this in order. I purchased some minis. Now minis are, look, you can see what I mean? See why they're called minis? Mini. Skein yarn, mini. And you might think, well, what can you do with that? Well, a couple of things. You could use them for contrasting heels and toes on socks if you've got a variegated colourway or self-striping yarn and the heel is going to interrupt the striping, and you don't want that. Or there are some specially designed projects for minis. There is also the Cozy Memories blanket by Ken Hooray, which if you're a podcast fan, you will have seen already. It's all the rage over the last couple of years, and because they're such big projects, most podcasters haven't finished them yet, so they're still going, so you still see a lot of them. And Kay Litton from Crazy Sock Lady podcast, she's got, I wish I could remember what it's called, she's doing a couple of gorgeous scrappy blankets. That sounds rough, but it's not. They're really, really pretty. She does something called Scrappy Sunday, so she sets aside Sunday just to do this with. There's also the Granny Stripe blanket, which again is from Lucy of Attic 24. That's taken all the podcasters by storm. It is a little bit like FOMO with knitters. You see someone making something, you think, I want to do that, and you just get on with it. So anyway, I purchased these 5 minis. You see they've got a bit of sparkle. I think she managed to convince me. No, I do have a couple. Right. Most of these are silver stellina and some of these are the gold. But I was looking for, I don't suppose I was really looking for a fade. I just wanted some minis to go together. I have this idea of potentially making like a cowl with them, and using a neutral in between, so possibly quite large blocks of this neutral in between, and we'll see. I've got an idea in my head, but it may be, I'm going to have a look on Ravelry, because it may be that someone else has already done it and I don't need to put the effort into designing it. I could just knit it and have fun. So yeah, it's by Karen Butler and it's called Literally Yarn. Hand dyed in Coventry by Karen Butler, and available exclusively from www.theyarncafe.com. All this information will be down below. Okay, so that's those. And I knew there were a few stands I wanted to go to. I really wanted to go to Siobhan's Crafts. I have bought from her Etsy shop before for a giveaway for the Project Bag Club, and I just thought she did a really good job of, it was, oh God, wasn't Toxic Watermelon. It was really bright and vibrant, and it fitted beautifully. And so we went over to her stand almost at the end of the day, and I picked up this one-of-a-kind colourway called oh, that's coming up beautifully. Yeah, that's maybe it's the brighter colours, it just blows out then at the minute. So yeah, there's her label, Siobhan's Crafts. She is on Etsy. She does a range of things. But yeah, so it's a one-of-a-kind colourway. This means it won't be available again. So once it's sold, it's sold. It happens when dyers just have a play around in the dye pots just for fun. And they might not write down absolutely everything they do to create the colourway, whereas normally they would, and then it'd become repeatable. But sometimes they just have fun, and this is what comes up. And I can totally see why she's called it Mermaid. It is a 4-ply, it's got a bit messy, 4-ply sock weight yarn. Just loving these pinks that kind of come through, and the purples. Yeah, the sun's coming in and out, isn't it? And it's affecting it. And it is 85% superwash Polworth, and I've never knit with Polworth before. It is a breed of sheep, in case you didn't know. Feeling it's not as, to me, Blueface Leicester feels rustic. I know lots of people say, oh no, it's fine, I can wear it next to skin, but I don't know, maybe I'm a sensitive soul. To me, it's not as rustic as Blueface Leicester, and I think this would, for me, come between Merino and Blueface Leicester. So we shall see. There you go. There's that one. I don't know. It's either going to become a pair of just pretty socks for me for Kristen's box of socks knit along year long, which I wanted to join in this year, and you're supposed to knit a minimum of 12 pairs, and I've knit maybe 4 or 5 possibly. Yeah, this will either just become one of those, or I think this would look really pretty as a one skein shawlette. but we shall see, because this is what I have got planned for this one. This is by Die Candy, which goes by Hutch. So much for one take, just go for it. I told you there were going to be mistakes, and I'm so sorry, Hutch, if I'm my lack of specificity about this is a problem. But anyway, can we focus on this? Can we focus on the colourway? Because it's wow. I didn't pick this. My husband picked this. I said to him, take me out of my comfort zone. And I knew that by going to Hutch's stand, I was going to be out of my comfort zone anyway, because her aesthetic is amazing. It's loud, it's proud, it's vibrant, it's full of the love and joy of colour. And yeah, and he chose for me this, and he said, what are you going to use it for? And I said, well, I want to use it to design a one skein shawl. I have used some of Verity's yarns from Truly Hooked to design my hat and mitts set, which I will talk about another time. And I just really want to use Hutch's yarn in that as well. And yeah, it's fantastic. It's got some little bits of red. You see the red in there, and the pinks and the purples. It's obviously predominantly this gorgeous blue. I just love it. I can't wait to see how these colours are going to play together. The thing is, like, you might think, oh, what's that red doing in there? Is that an accident? I don't think it is. I think it's all part of the art, all part of the fun. This is called Brat. Maybe my husband was trying to tell me something about how much yarn I was buying. I don't know. No, he wouldn't do that. He's a sweetheart. It is 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. And feeling this next to this, I would definitely say that Polworth comes between merino and Blueface Leicester. Blueface Leicester being the more rustic of them. I'm not saying toothy, it's not itchy or scratchy or anything like that, but you can it definitely feels like sheep. If you know what sheep feel like. So yeah, really excited about that. And then I went to, well, last actually, I'm going to start at the end now. I went to watercolour and lace. I went last year to Fibre East, and it was my first foray properly into the world of indie dyed yarns. I knew they were beautiful because I'd seen them on podcasts, but if you compare them to, not that you can compare them, but if you compare them to commercial yarns, they can seem quite an investment. And do you know what they are, and why not? There's a real skill and a real art to dyeing yarn, and it's time intensive, labour intensive. It's an incredibly physical job. I have absolutely no problem paying out for indie dyed yarn, because what you get is just, look at the sheen on that. Sorry, I've just held it up to the camera and got completely distracted. I told you, didn't I? Magpie. So, squirrel! Off she goes. So this is from Watercolours and Lace. It is a stand that, again, I'm looking at the yarn, not at you. It is a stand that I visited last year. Oh, beautiful, isn't it? Just admire. I'm going to hold it there. And it's not going to focus. I'll put it down. It's a stand I visited last year, and they have a very beautiful aesthetic. You can see why it's called Watercolours and Lace. There's something very watercoloury, I suppose, about it. It's got that delicacy, that almost impermanence. Yeah, I'm really struggling for how to describe it. This is stunning. And again, I said to my husband, what do you think, this one or the one with the pinks and purples? And he chose this one. It is 100% mulberry silk. I do not know what mulberry silk is, what it means. What I can tell you is it's gorgeously soft. It's called Stormy Greys. And actually, now I've seen it's called Stormy Greys, I can kind of see the grey quality to it more. I don't know what you're seeing, but when I first picked this up, I saw blues, not greys. But I've just read the colourway Stormy Greys, and now suddenly it looks grey to me. It's a bit like that dress. Do you see blue and black or white and gold? Ridiculous, huh? It did set me back £21, but it's totally worth it. It's lace weight, which means it's incredibly fine. If I right, can you see how fine that is? Yeah. This is going to be a shawl, a proper sized shawl, not a shawlette. That I've got a design in my head. This will not be coming out anytime soon. It's going to take a long time to get down onto paper. And I'm just going to have fun with it. So here it is. It's beautiful, and you probably won't see it again now until the spring, because we are getting very close to Christmas. It's, you know, less than 5 months away now, and there's a lot of Christmas knitting to be done. And after that, I went to, I'm sorry if I'm whizzing through, but I know this isn't everyone's cup of tea, Dragon Hill Studios. Hiya, future Gemma popping in from Sunday. Spent 3 days getting this video ready to upload, uploading it, playing it, very proud of myself. Discovered I've made a horrendous error. On the original footage, I was talking about Dragon Hill Studios and I was so worried about getting Sharon's name wrong that I wrote it down in my bullet journal from her business card, checked it, actually on the podcast, checked that I got it right, and proceeded to record the entire thing calling her Sandra. All I can think is I was so nervous about recording the podcast anyway. It quite clearly says Sharon, quite clearly. But for whatever reason, I read that as Sandra. So I'm here, I'm going to re-record it. I'm so sorry, Sharon, to have got it wrong. But we're going to re-record this section. I'm going to pop it in. So apologies for the costume change, the hair change, everything. That's why. But I did toy with the idea of saying it was a technical error, but it wasn't. It was a very, very human error made by me. And so I thought it was best to be honest. Yeah, my apologies. So I then went to Dragon Hill Studio, and it was a stall that I'd wanted to find because I'd seen it on Instagram, and Dragon Hill Studio said, oh, come and say hi, as you would do if you were a vendor. And so I said I would. And as we were walking past, I saw the sign and I went, oh, and I introduced myself. Obviously, I'm just a logo on Instagram, so she didn't know who I was, but we got chatting, and such a lovely person. She really is. We must have been stood there chatting for half an hour. She was so giving of her time. It was really, really good. I was drawn there. I would have been drawn there anyway if I hadn't seen the sign because of the yarns. And I'm going to start actually by showing you this one. Oh, let me move the ribbon out of the way. I've got the ribbon on sideways. There we go. Right, move the ribbon off. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Now these are amazing for a couple of reasons. I have never seen this before. I've never seen sock yarn pre-caked at a show. And this is a yarn cake basically. It's wound on a ball winder. And it means it can just sit there quite happily and you can pull your yarn without the ball running around all over the room. But what's really special is this here. Now what this is how the socks will knit up. They're self-striping, but they've actually wrapped them around the socks. So sorry, it'll go that way. Yeah, how they'll knit up, and those will be the stripes. And isn't this incredible? Do you see the precision of this dye job? The precision of the darker colours within the more muted ones. I just think that's amazing. And it was so prettily packaged as well. It just, the finishing touches, the level of effort and detail that these guys go to is just amazing. There's their card, Dragon Hill Studio. And it is their Sherborne Sparkle Sock 4-ply, 75% merino, 20% nylon, 5% stellina. And the colourway is Pink Dahlia, and it really is, isn't it? And this pink and green together, they were obviously onto a winner here, because also on their stand, hanging up on the wall, was this skein of lace weight yarn. And as you can see, it's very similar to the pink in there. And it was hanging next to a skein of lace weight that was a very similar green to that. And I saw them and I thought, I need to have those in my life. It was one of those that I couldn't have left there. I had to have them. But I also was very conscious that I didn't want to get a skein of lace weight like I got last year when I was down in Devon. I picked up a skein of Juno Fibre Arts, and it's very beautiful, but it's still in its skein. And I thought, no, I don't want that. This has to be used. I mean, just look at the colours there. You see all the variants. Gorgeous. So I was very good. I went away and I found a Ravelry pattern, and I went back. I decided to go back for the yarn later, and they were talking to us about the dye process, and this is really labour intensive to do, to arrange this in this pretty way, but it is so effective, and it's actually possibly one of my favourite. It's possibly my favourite purchase, and considering that I went to with the express desire of getting some particular things, I mean, just looking at it makes me happy. So even if it doesn't become socks for a while, I think it would just, you know, maybe have it on the podcast just sitting up there or something, looking pretty. I don't know. Yeah, and they were so kind. Sharon and Andrew, they talked to us for a long time and talked about the designing process. She designs for Knit Now and Crochet Now, and she has designed for other publications as well. Looking at the website, there's also an award on there for Best Newcomer Designer from, I think it was 2017. Now, I reckon she's probably going for a lot longer than that. She might just have broken through, but her designs are absolutely exquisite. I mean, if she is a new designer, then wow, absolutely blows your mind. But she won that award, very deserving. Her samples on her stand, if you were there and you saw, you'll know just how beautiful they are. And she was really kind, talking to me as someone who is starting up a new business and is starting to design knitwear myself. Very, very kind. And with the socks, it was brilliant. They were both wearing striping socks, self-striping socks, and she called over to Andrew, "Flash us your socks, Andrew," and he went with his trousers, and it was fabulous. They're such a lovely couple. So I went back and I picked up this gorgeous skein of lace weight yarn. Very proud of myself for having chosen a project, and I will put a picture here. It is the Julian Shawl by Lisa R. Myers, and it is predominantly stockinette with a wide lace border. And the reason I wanted to use something that's predominantly stockinette is because I really wanted to show off the beautiful tones in this colourway. And so I went back and I paid him, and off I went, and this voice behind me went, "Don't you want your yarn?" And I turned around and there was Andrew holding my yarn, because I had picked it up, handed it to him, handed him the money to pay for it, and then left without my yarn. I was so embarrassed, just thinking, oh, they've spent all this time talking to me and I've just done that. And now, of course, I'm re-recording this segment because I spent the entire thing getting her name wrong because I was so nervous in the first place. So Sharon and Andrew, thank you both so much for talking to us, for spending all that time and being so giving of your time. Really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to showing off how my beautiful yarns from you knit up on the podcast in a future episode. And that brings me to the first stand I visited with my husband at Fibre East on Saturday. And you might be wondering, and I couldn't blame you, why would you talk about the first stand last? And those of you that I've said to come back in this timestamp because you're not interested in the wool piggery will probably be thinking, why are you still talking about Fibre East and shopping? It'll become clear. So the first stand I visited was Verity's stand. Verity is the yarn dyer and designer behind Truly Hooked, and I went to pick up her new book, The Second Drawdown. This is the sister publication, the sequel, if you like, the sock sequel to her award-winning book, The Sock Drawer, which I own and is beautiful and I love. And I'm only just starting my sock knitting adventures, so I haven't actually knit any from that yet, but there's a story behind this one. It was May, and she put the call out for test knitters for a sock for this book that will be coming out. I had been going to test knit something for her before, but that was back in end of January, beginning of February, and my daughter was born in February. I was in hospital from the very start of February, so I had to step back from that. But I put my hat into the ring. I said, here are some cables that I've done, and this is my sock yarn that I've got of yours. Please may I test your sock? And it's great. Being a test knitter is really fun. You work to a deadline, which can be quite stressful, but it forces you to get things finished, but also it means you get to try someone's pattern before anyone else, so it's a bit like, VIP treatment almost. To my delight, Verity said, yes please, I'd love you to knit this. Please use this colour sock yarn, because you use the dyer's yarn if it's a dyer as well. Please use this colour sock yarn. Can you do it within 3 weeks, because we're on a tight deadline? So yep, sure, I can manage that. And I'm thinking, can I? Yes, okay, I can. A little bit of knitting each day. And we cracked on. And obviously we talked a bit while we were doing it. And she said, oh, how are you finding it? I said, honestly, I want to thank you. And this is where I've got to try and do it without bursting into tears all over you all. Those who were keen-eared amongst you will have heard me refer to my daughter having passed away earlier in the podcast. I am mummy to one, Lara. Lara Felicity Elizabeth Mills is her name. I should imagine a lot of you already know about her and already know her story, because if you're here watching the first episode, chances are that you have been following my page since it started in January. And you already know that I went into hospital for a few weeks, and you already know that my little lady was born on the 11th of February 2018, 3.5 months prematurely, through no fault of her own. And you will also know, because I had to close the project I had for a while, that she passed away on the 15th of March. Excuse me. This is the 4th time I've recorded this, because I've tried to do it without crying, and I think I'm just going to have to accept that I'm not going to be able to. Lara was amazing. She was beautiful and feisty. Perfect. And she came out crying, which defied everyone's expectations. We'd been warned she probably wouldn't, that she would be ventilating and probably wouldn't breathe on her own because she was so little. But she came out shouting about it. She was not impressed at having been evicted, because she was forcibly evicted. It wasn't her fault that she was premature. My body had started preparing itself for labour, which is ridiculous. Clearly, you know, it thinks it was a microwave rather than an oven. You know, bing, you're done. We don't know why. We'll never know why, I don't think. And she came out cross, very cross, letting us all know about it. And my mum, it was lovely. She said to me a while afterwards, she said, I remember the first time I went into NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, to see Lara, and you've got all these little babies in their incubators, all curled up, you know, like that, looking like something out of an Anne Geed's calendar. Do you know what I mean? She takes the pictures of the babies, and yeah, all tucked up, legs tucked up underneath them, head on the hands, beautiful. And then you just get this leg in the air from my daughter's incubator. She was not your average premature baby. She had bags of attitude, which is amazing. And that's Lara, pretty much. That pretty much sums her up. She was feisty, she was strong, she defied expectations. And then, when she was 32 days old, pretty much out of nowhere, she suffered a collapse, which means her heart rate slowed, her breathing slowed, her oxygen levels in her blood dipped, and that they couldn't stabilise her, and she passed away on the 15th of March this year at 32 days old. And I'm not going to go into her story fully. I would love to sit here and tell you how proud I am of her and tell you all the stories about all the things she got up to. She got me in trouble a few times as well, I will tell you that. My little lady. And that's what they called her as well. They called her the little lady. She was the boss of the NICU, I tell you. Yeah. And so here I was, knitting this sock, and it was just what I needed. It was intuitive enough once you get used to the cable pattern that you can kind of anticipate what's coming next, but it was complicated enough to require some brain space and took me out of where I was in my grief for a bit. And Verity messaged me afterwards, how are you getting on? And I was very open and honest, because she's suffered some personal tragedy in her life as well, and has found crafting to be a real help for that. And she does talk about that in her book, but I shan't talk about that here. It's not my place. So I told her, I said, no, it's just what I need. This is where I'm at, and it's really helping me, because I knew she'd understand. And she did. And what was amazing was not only did she understand, but she messaged me a while later and she said, look, this pattern doesn't have a name yet. And if it's all right with you, I would really like to name it for Lara. And I was so touched. Of course, what an honour. Lara was here for such a little time, but she was here and she mattered, just like all the babies are. And she'd said, oh, you know, to me before, what else are you doing? And I said, to help. And I said, well, to help me, I'm walking a lot. So I'm walking 1,000 miles to raise money for Bliss, which is the charity for the newborn. And one of its aims is to help, or main aim is to help the 95,000 babies born sick or premature each year. And it funds research into neonatal care and into fetal medicine, and it provides Bliss champions, who are people that go into the hospitals and they work with the families of children who are in neonatal intensive care and paediatric, I think mostly neonatal intensive care, because it is a newborn charity. And yeah, it's really important. I've already said we don't know what happened. We don't know why Lara was so early, and we don't know why she was taken when she appeared to be so healthy. But what I do know is that one of the reasons she was so healthy when she was born is because of these tests that, it's a fibronectin test that tells you if you're likely to go into labour in the next fortnight. And I had that. That was actually pioneered by Tommy's. But also, like, the research that Bliss does and the support they give funds things to make the babies' lives in NICU better, and the research. So I was given steroids to bring on her lungs, and I'm pretty sure that's why she was able to breathe independently when she was born just over a week later. And magnesium sulfate to prevent bleeds on the brain, because obviously the baby's heads are very, very soft. Brains aren't developed at 26 weeks. They carry on developing once they're born, if they're born that early. And so I'm raising money for that. And Verity said to me, well, I'd like to dedicate this pattern to Lara. I'd like to name it for her. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to include a link to your fundraising page to help you in your mission to spread awareness of prematurity and to help raise money for your cause in Lara's name, for Lara's legacy. And I think that's one of the things that knitting has done. It introduces you to some of the most beautiful, beautiful people. I haven't met an nasty knitter. And of course I said yes. It's such an honour to have a pattern named for Lara. And it's a beautiful pattern. And to have her story shared among Verity's many, many fans, and have the page shared. It's not all about getting people to donate, it's as much about raising awareness as anything else. So I had no idea before it happened to me, or happened to us I should say, about the about prematurity, about any of it. NICU I'd heard of on Holby City or Casualty, but it was never this sort of situation. Yeah. And so yeah, we said yes. Of course we said yes. We said thank you very much. And the book came out last Monday, and it debuted. She had some with her at Fibre East, and you could pre-order it and opt to collect it at Fibre East, and that's what we did. We pre-ordered our own copy and said we'd collect it. She knew, obviously, because she handles all the orders, that we were going to go, and so we went there first. We went there first because she was actually in the first hall. And because of the way in which Fibre East is in a school, that makes it sound small, but it's not. It's ginormous. It's got like huge gyms. It's incredible for one school. And obviously marquees on the fields as well. So it's in the first hall. So you go through the first room, which has all the guilds of spinners, weavers, and then the next hall, she was in that one. And just because of the way it's done, people tend to sort of go around in a circle kind of thing, in a circuit. So we got there fairly early, and we went to that stand first because we knew that we needed time with Verity to thank her and to pick up the book. And we didn't want to be doing that in public because obviously there were tears. There were tears. It was lovely to meet her in person. She gives fantastic hugs. really fantastic hugs, and we posed for a photo with the book, and she wrote a beautiful introduction in it about Lara and about why she'd named the pattern for her. I'm going to show you a picture of the pattern now. I won't give away the secret sauce, but there you go. There's Lara. Well, there's not Lara, it's the name Lara, and there are the Lara socks. The glare's there. But do you see? And it's these cables here, these twists. They reminded her of the tentacles in Lara's octopus. So when we were talking, I had sent Verity a couple of pictures of Lara, and one of them was one of my favourites, with her sleeping in her incubator, holding on to Penelope, her octopus. It wasn't named by us, it was named by one of the NICU nurses. And she said that actually as soon as she saw that picture, she knew that that pattern had to be, it was perfect for Lara. And she's right, it really does look like the tentacles on Penelope and her favourite octopus. And the octopus in itself is done, it's a fairly recent innovation, and the purpose of them is to give the little one something to hold. It mimics the umbilical cord as well, apparently. I didn't look. I haven't looked at any of that when she was born. And it stops them, in theory, it stops them pulling out their tubes. I might pop a picture of her here with Penelope. It didn't work for our Lara. She pulled her tubes out anyway. She didn't have many. She literally had the feeding tube, because when you're that little you can't suck and swallow and breathe all at the same time. So they did have to feed her through a tube. She had milk, but it's through a tube. Totally painless for her. But she pulled out anyway. She's loved her octopus. She had hold of it all the time and did crazy things with it. Like, we walked in once and she had her octopus on her head. I said, what's happened there? And she had literally done it herself. She was like, yes, I don't want to hold them anymore. And she literally had tentacles like that, like some sort of pink wig. It was amazing. Yeah, so we went to Verity's stand and we picked up the book and we had hugs and we thanked her in person. And my husband introduced himself as well, and it meant a lot. It really did mean a lot to do that. And we took a picture for the blog, for the Just Giving page. And I thought I'd talk to you about it briefly here. That's that special thing I wanted to share with you. What a wonderful person Verity is. I've obviously thanked Verity in person, but on the off chance she sees this, I want to say thank you again to you and your husband. You have done something truly special. You've given us something really special, and you are going to be playing a big part in helping us get the awareness out there, and hopefully changing the future for these 95,000 babies and their families. So thank you very much. I hope I haven't made you guys cry too much, my lovely viewers who've dropped in. Hopefully you've been able to share in the joy that is my daughter as well, and some of the antics she got up to has made you laugh. If you would like to find out more about her story and about our fundraising efforts, you can follow that on Facebook, but also I'll put the Just Giving link just here. It is a Just Giving page. I'm not giving it with the expectation that obviously you donate. There are so many ways to support this cause. Sharing it, for one thing, spreading the word is a big one of that. And I do put regular updates on there about what we're up to and how we're doing. And there are some more little pictures of Lara there as well, and some stories about what she got up to when she was with us. So that's there. If any of you have been personally affected by any of the issues that I've raised today in this podcast, there are a number of supports available. Nothing will fix it. Nothing can make it better. But with support it can be livable with, and there can be hope. And you can get to a place where you can focus on the joy. Obviously nationwide there are regional and local supports, and they vary from area to area. And one of the things I want to do is create Lara's Legacies website, where we have a catalogue of all the supports that are available around the country. But there are some national ones. So first of all, if you know someone with a sick or premature baby, a baby in hospital, Bliss, the charity I've mentioned already, is excellent for that. Bliss champions are in most hospitals, but not all at the moment. But if you get in touch with them, then they'll be able to put you in touch with someone who can come and support you and help you. They also can provide, in certain circumstances, financial help to enable parents to stay near their children. My friend did some research into it when we were looking at having to leave Lara in hospital, because the hospital she was born in is quite a significant way away from our family home. We live in Kent, she was born in Surrey, because that's the grade 3. I can't get into all the details, but there are different grades of hospitals that can care for babies from different gestations, and a grade 3 is can have them from the youngest they're possibly able to live from. I think 22 weeks was one of the youngest that they had there. I could be wrong. Anyway, we were lucky, we were able to stay in a family room in the end, but there are 4 family rooms, and there are obviously 3 nurseries of babies who are being looked after, so things can be tight. And in those circumstances, sometimes parents can be sent home because the rooms need to be allocated on a case-by-case basis. It is done by distance, but it's also done by how poorly the child is, and we were looking at having to leave because Lara was in good health. So my friend researched Bliss and found that actually there is some support, some financial help that they can provide as well to help parents stay nearer their children if they're in that situation. Tommy actually has an app you can download called My Premature Baby app, and they have lots of support on their website as well. They have clinics that you can refer to for a subsequent pregnancy if you want. So if you've had an extreme prem baby or a poorly baby before, you can refer to those and they'll do some extra checks on you. And there's Bliss, there's Tommy's. For the unhappy endings, if you get to the situation that I'm in, or are in the situation that I'm in, then there is support. SANS, Stillbirth and Neonatal Death Support Charity. It's national. It has a fantastic website. It has a fantastic online forum. There are sections just for dads as well, which is really important, because quite often people assume dads are going to be, I don't know, stronger, not need the support. Of course they do. There are pamphlets that the hospital should give with advice and guidance for friends and family. So if you know someone in our situation, for example, if you're a friend of someone, it can be really hard to know what to say. And if you ask that person that you know what they should be doing or saying, they probably say they don't know, because there's no script for this, there's no guidelines, but there is support for you as a friend or family member of bereaved parents. So that's really useful as well. And Cruse Bereavement is national as well, CRUSE. As far as I'm aware, it's national. It's run by volunteers, and you can find their telephone helplines, and they are open for a certain amount of time, but they will call you back and they can provide you with support and counselling. There isn't a lot of specialised grief counselling available on the NHS. It tends to be short term. It's not to say you can't get it, but it does tend to be short term. You could also have, depending where you are, a referral potentially to Fairhavens for counselling, so it's worth getting in touch. Maybe trying to speak to someone in a hospital or bereavement midwife. I'll put all this information down here for you should you need it. I really, really hope that you don't. But the thing is, when it's 15 babies a day, the chances are that some of you will either have been affected in the past or are affected at the moment by what I'm talking about. So there we are. Hopefully that's given you some help and support if you didn't know about it already. I've probably said thank you already, but thank you. Thank you for sticking with the podcast for this long and waiting to hear about this special story with this very special thing that Verity did for Lara's daddy and me and Lara, and to help others. Thank you for dropping by and checking out the podcast, and for all your support. It's really much appreciated. I'm not going to end with a shop update this podcast. I think that's fairly obvious why. But what I will do to I don't want to say end on a positive, because to me Lara is joy, but I think you know what I mean. I can't quite find the words. Let's end with something beautiful, something else beautiful. I mentioned before that Verity is also a yarn dyer. Truly Hooked is an indie dyed yarn brand, and I knew when I went to Fibre East that I wanted this particular colourway. I knew that it was on the list for Verity to dye for the festivals, and I had made the decision to get a sweater's quantity of this colourway. And here it is. Shall I show you? Here it is. Look, there we go. This is called Pickled Cabbage, and I'm sure looking at it you can see instantly why. Slightly odd fact about me, pickled cabbage is one of my favourite things. For me, Christmas isn't complete unless there's pickled cabbage. And never mind the Christmas pudding, I could even pass the turkey, there's got to be pickled cabbage. So there we are. I have got a sweater's quantity of this. I've got 3 skeins. I've just got 2 out, but again you can see how the colours play together ever so slightly differently depending on the skein. I chatted to Verity about this and about whether or not to alternate yarns. I'm not going to. She's not on a project she's doing at the moment, and the pooling is just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So yeah, that's going to be on my needles soon, and it's going to be a really, really treasured jumper because it's such a beautiful colourway and I bought it on such a special day. Yeah, there we are. Right, that's the end of the podcast. I've said thank you already. I'm going to say thank you one more time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking around. I hope you didn't find that too heavy at the end. Apologies if you did, and if it's caused you any distress. What I can say is the next podcast will not be as long, just that I wanted to dedicate the time to talk about this important thing at the end, and I'm sure you can appreciate that. So have a really wonderful week. Enjoy the sunshine, which is coming back to us. I'm looking out the window now and it's glorious out there. Spend time with loved ones, doing the things you love, lots of crafting. Do join in all the groups and show us what you've been up to. And I will see you next week for some more crafty chat. Thank you. Bye.